Hi, everyone. And yeah, thank you so much for joining this second webinar of our user group, Microsoft 365 Maturity and Governance. In this webinar, we want to give you an introduction and overview of the Microsoft 365 governance tool, Rencore Governance. Before I begin, I have a couple of notes. We record the webinar, and I'm going to share links to the video and the slides after the webinar. I need a few, maybe days for the post-production of the video, but I think I'm going to release it on Monday, maybe. If you're not a member of the user group yet, you can apply. I think I have pasted the URL, the link in the chat already, yes. Questions will be answered at the end, and you can use a Q&A or just the chat to ask your questions, and then we will come back to your questions and answer them at the end of the webinar. If you have any ideas for future webinar topics, you can also tell us in the chat. It's always important for me to know what the members would like to see. And if you have any ideas for new members, so we have around 122, I think, members at the moment. I'm planning to do an in-person event here in Brisbane. And 120 is not enough, I think, because I want to have at least 200, 250 members, so that it makes sense to have an in-person event so that enough people come to this event. So we need more members. So if you know anyone in your organization or in other organizations, go ahead and talk to them so that we get more members. Okay, now let's have a look at the agenda. I will start with an introduction of the basics of the Rencore governance tool. Then I will talk about the menu, the navigation, and basic features. I will then go into the actual features of the tool, that is dashboards, inventory, compliance, automation, and reports. And I will then hand over to Ryan, and he will talk about the two latest features, access review and provisioning. And then he will talk about the versions, the available tool versions, the current pricing, and he will answer a few frequently asked questions. And at the end, as I said, we will answer your questions. So if you have any questions, go ahead and paste them or write them in the chat or in the Q&A. Just in case you don't know me, I think most of you know me already. My name is Peter Potrefsky, Director of FAQs 7 here in Brisbane. I'm in the IT business for 30 years now as project manager, developer, and consultant. I know SharePoint since 2001, SharePoint portal server. I know Microsoft 365 since 2011, and today I'm working in the field of governance and controlling the Microsoft 365 platform for our clients. If you want to contact me, you see here my LinkedIn page and my email. If you want to know more about FAQs 7, you can contact me or Ryan. Before I dive into the application, I just have a handful of slides, just a few, not that many, as an introduction to the tool. And I want to start with a question: what is Microsoft 365 governance? Microsoft 365 governance refers to the set of policies, processes, and controls that organizations put in place to oversee, control, and manage their Microsoft 365 environment effectively. Okay, so what do we want to oversee, control, and manage? So what the tool, the Rencore governance tool, does is it looks at security costs, the decluttering status of the environment, the efficiency, compliance, operational status, adoption level, external access of resources, and provisioning of Teams and SharePoint sites. What it doesn't do is it's not a data governance tool. That's what we have Microsoft Purview for. And the guys at Rencore, their philosophy is that they see their tool as an extension to Microsoft Purview. Maybe not an extension, but they say that both tools should be used for a complete governance, but they are not focusing on data governance. So that's what Microsoft Purview is for, and Microsoft Purview is pretty good at data governance. Now let's see what Rencore Governance can give us, what the tool can give us to do this overseeing, control, and management. So it lets us oversee important data, policy status, and report results on dashboards. So it gives us dashboards, gives us a way to drill down into features and the properties of objects. So when I talk about objects here, objects in this sense can be user subscriptions, teams, channels, flows, apps, SharePoint sites, Viva communities, OneDrive files and folders, even Azure Enterprise applications, devices, client secrets, and so on. So everything basically what we have in Microsoft 365 is an object, and the tool is managing overseeing, managing, and controlling all those objects. It lets us run administration commands on objects. It lets us create reports on objects, define rules and policies for objects, then automate actions in case of policy violations, and it lets us define teams and site provisioning processes. And it lets us set up continuous resource access reviews. So the last two features are the latest features, and as I said, Ryan is going to talk about those two features later. Now let's have a look at how the tool is doing that. So on the left side, you see our tenant or your tenant in your organization. Rencore Governance is a SaaS application, so it sits in the cloud. It scans on a regular basis your tenant or the metadata of your tenant and puts it in a database. It then gives us a few features to look at the data, work with this data, and to do automation with the data. The inventory, for example, is a view on this database. So with the inventory, you can look at the data and you can drill down. And then you get dashboards, you get reports, compliance policies, you get automation, access review, and provisioning. And we are going to talk about all those features today. So this is one option that Rencore gives us, your tenant and Rencore Governance in the cloud. But there is another option, that's the self-hosted option, where everything sits in your own tenant. So the entire solution is hosted by yourself in your own Azure subscription. In this case, there is the need for additional installation and onboarding. So it comes with a few fees, and the license costs are a bit higher because Rencore has to do more management. Your own infrastructure costs, obviously, if you run everything in your own tenant, you get your own infrastructure costs are not included in the licensing fees. Okay, now let's have a look at the actual application. Switch the application. Yeah, that's the application. So I want to start with all the features that we see here at the top. When we start at the top left, we have this little drop-down menu where we can change the so-called environment. An environment is basically your tenant. So if you have one tenant, you will have one environment. If you have several tenants, like a multi-tenant environment, you will have several environments. You always have one environment per tenant. They just call it environment. They could have called it tenant. That's the environment. Above the environment, you have another layer, so-called a workspace. A workspace can have one or more tenants, and a workspace is located in a certain region, in a certain data center, in a certain region. So if you have a global organization that works in different countries, you want to have different workspaces for each country because you want to have your data of a specific country in a specific region in a specific data center. So that's why you would create workspaces. In our case, FAQ of 7, we only have one tenant, so we only have one workspace. Although we work in Europe and Australia, but we still have one tenant, so we can only have one workspace with one environment. What we then see here at the top right, this little gear wheel, is the settings. So here you can change a few settings. It's basically environment settings and workspace settings, titles, environments, appearance, user and roles, profile security, and so on for your environments, so your tenants and your workspaces. What we also see here is the notifications. So Rencore tells you when it does scans, for example, tells you about the scans, when they happen, and yeah, that they happened. And there are, I think, a few other notifications. Just looking for OneDrive files shared with external users, for example, here. Yeah, if violations are found, this is also in the notifications. So if new violations of policies happen, you are notified here. The third one is just the different releases. So they have links to the releases, and you can read more about the releases and the new features for each release. Then we have a help center. The help center is pretty comprehensive. So we have a getting started section here, introduction, quick start, product basics, FAQ, and so on. We have how-to guides. Basically, for every feature that we have, dashboards, reports, inventory, compliance, and so on, we have like one a set of how-tos, more for the beginner. Again, we have the releases with the year and the different releases, so you can look into the releases and the features. You have a technical documentation for the technical people in the organization, and you have accounts and subscription help. So the help documentation is pretty good. What else do we have? This one. Just start the page. Yeah, that's the feedback feature. So you can report a bug. You can send them a feature request if you have an idea or if you need something that's not yet implemented, and you can send them general feedback about the tool. Yeah, that's it's basically with the menu navigation and the features. At the top left here, we see all the different features. So we have 7 features: dashboards, reports, inventory, compliance, access provisioning, and automation. So I will go through all those features now, beginning with the dashboards. Yeah, why is it called dashboards? Plural, because there are several dashboards you can choose from. So the dashboard we see here is the tenant overview. That's the collection of the most important tiles that you want to see. But then you also have different other dashboards that show a specific tiles for specific subject areas, like costs, for example. Here we have the cost dashboard. Just as a few examples, potential monthly cost savings for disabled user accounts. The first one, we have top 10 departments by monthly license costs. We have users with Power Platform premium license, and so on. So a lot of, so I can just scroll down, show you how many tiles we have here only in this on this cost dashboard. We have a security dashboard, so security topics here, also similar size. We have the decluttering dashboard, operation, and so on. We have adoption, external access, user offboarding, Teams, Power Platform governance, SharePoint Teams, and OneDrive. User offboarding is pretty interesting, for example. So it's all around offboarding of users that don't work in your organization anymore, but still have, I don't know, subscriptions, licenses, whatever. disabled user accounts, for example, if you want to declutter a little bit, user offboarding, OneDrive with files belonging to disabled users. So all information around users that are not working anymore in your organization. So what you can do with the dashboards is you can, so it's all configurable. So that's very important in this tool. Everything is configurable. You can add, remove, change a whole dashboards. You can also move, add, remove, and change the tiles on each dashboard. You can create your own tiles. You can change the existing tiles. So if we click on Edit Dashboard here, see that in this user offboarding dashboard, each tile has those 3 dots. You can configure the tile and you can remove it from the dashboard. If trying to find one, okay, this is, for example, this tile is based on a policy. You can also go from here to the underlying policy that the tile is based on, and again configure and remove from the dashboard. You can also move around the tiles so that you can put your most important tiles at the top. So everything is configurable. Yeah, so much about the dashboards. Now I would like to talk about the inventory. So remember, the inventory was a view on the database with all the data. So let's go to inventory. Just collapse all segments here. So we have, how many are there? 9 segments. 9. Yes, we have Microsoft 365, like general objects. We have team-specific objects. We have Power Automate, Power Apps, SharePoint, Viva Engage, OneDrive, Exchange, and Azure Active Directory topics. If we open Teams, for example, we see subsegments inside of the Teams segment, Teams and Teams channels, for example, also other segments here. Then this Teams segment, we can open up this one. We see another level of subsegments: archive teams, new teams, private teams, and public teams. What we see here, the last column, last scan, tells you when this objects or those objects were scanned the last time. So in this case, the teams were all scanned yesterday, for example. Teams tabs were scanned 8 days ago, and Teams apps even 25 days ago. When things are scanned in Rencore can be configured. So everything is configurable, as I said, and also when and how often something is scanned. Obviously, the tool needs resources to scan things. So if you can't just do everything daily, you have to be a bit careful and everything has to be balanced. But the initial setting that comes with the tool is already pretty good and reasonable. So I want to show you the private teams, because we have most of our teams are private. I think that's pretty normal. So now we are in this object private teams. We are still in an inventory. We are still investigating objects. In this case, our private teams. At the bottom here, we have the list of all private teams. At the top, you have 3 tiles. Left one is just the number of private teams we have, and the trend. I think the trend is they measure the last month. I'm not really sure, but it tells you a little bit about the growth of of the number. In this case, the number of private teams. Second tile, obviously just an image of the trend. And then we have at the top right the violated policies in this area. So for the private teams, I will come to policies in the compliance section. So we will talk about that in more detail in a few minutes. And at the bottom here, we have our list of private teams. So now we want to search for one private team, and we can just show you. If we choose one team, we use the profile manager. So now I am in this object profile manager, the team profile manager. So I'm in one team now. And what we see here on the left side is three tiles. The parent objects for a team. The parent object is the group. In this case, also called profile manager. So it was just created with the creation of the team. Nothing special here. The second tile is compliance. Tells you how many policies have passed. So for this profile manager team, 13 or 15 policies have passed. So there is something wrong with 2 policies. So 2 policies haven't passed. And again, we have the last scan date here that we had also in the list already. In the middle, we see a few tabs here at the top. We start with the properties tab. That's just a list of the properties of this team's name, display name, description, is archived or not. So the properties of a team. Second tab is more interesting. It shows you the related object of a team. So the related objects of a team are the members, the owners, and the team channels. So as we see here, we have 6 members. We can open that and see the members of this team. And we see one owner. And we see that the team has 1 channel. It's just the default channel that comes with creating the team, the general channel. The fact that we have only 1 owner here is an issue. That's why we have 2 policies that haven't passed, because the 1 owner is not good. You always want to have at least 2 owners. Just if the 1 owner leaves the company or something happens with him, you always want to have a fallback. So you need at least two owners per team. So that's a problem. That's a violation against the policy that we have defined, and we will see that later on. The third tab here is the policy tab. So here we see all the 15 policies that are defined for teams. We see that 13 have passed and 2 we have violations. So we have the 2 policies, teams with very few owners and teams with less than 2 owners. It's basically the same policy. It's just that we have created this policy, I think, for presentation purposes once, and we still have that in the application. And I will show you when we come to the compliance part how those policies are created and edited. All right, then we have the access tab here at the top. And Ryan is going to talk about access reviews in his part of the presentation later. At the top right, we have actions. It's pretty important. So what you can do with your object here, in this case, the team profile manager, is you can immediately do some actions. Normally you would, if you want to do something like archive the team, you would go to the admin center, the team's admin center, and would do it in the admin center. You would have to find the team and then find the feature and do the stuff. What Rencore gives us here is like a centralized list of actions that you can perform with the different object types that you have. For team, it's for example those 4 things: archive team, delete team, add user to a team, remove user from a team. If we go to another object, let's say we open up the members here and we click on one of the members of this team, then it opens the inventory for the user object. In this case, Johannes Kahn, the user, and we see again the properties of this user related object and so on. But I just wanted to show you the actions that are possible with a user as a object type. So you can do a lot more here: disable user account, delete user account, add user to a group, and so on and so on. So all those things that you normally would do with in an admin center, you can do directly from the tool. That's very helpful for administrators. Now let's talk about compliance. Switch the feature again. Now here we have compliance. We see we have 112 compliance policies defined in our system. Most of them are the default compliance policies that come with the tool. It's 109 that come with the tool as default policies, all very helpful. And those 109 policies already give you a pretty good governance system. I want to explain quickly the columns of this list, of this table. So first of all, we have the status, so you can switch on and off a policy if you want to. For example, if you work on a policy and it's still in draft mode, you want to switch it off. So we can, for example, switch that off, and asks you again because it's pretty important. Or if you work on a new one and it takes you a few days, you start working on it, but you don't set the status to on immediately. Obviously, you want to finish it and then you switch it on. Second column is severity that you can define for each policy. You have the number of violation for each policy. You have the service of the policy, so the Microsoft 365 service that the policy is working in. You have the title, you have, is it a custom policy or is it a default policy that came with the tool? So here we see we have on this page 2 custom policies that we have created. You have the trend of the violations. So the violations growing or shrinking. Obviously you want to have negative values here. You have a category that's again something you can define in the policy when you create the policy. And you have the last data update. So again, also not only for objects, but also for policies. Policies are checked also regularly. And you can also configure when and how often a policy is checked. So the first policy, for example, was checked yesterday, and other policies are checked not that often. For example, enterprise applications without owners are checked only every 2 weeks. We see a little link here at the top right. You can always, if you have like a table view like that, you can always export in CSV. So that's everywhere in the tool. I'm going to go to my list so I don't forget anything. Okay, now we want to edit the policy. So let's pick teams with very few owners. So now I'm in the policy. We see at the top left again how many violations we have and the trend of the violations. We see like a graphical visualization here of the trend. And again, we see automations, and I will come to automations later. At the bottom here, we see all the teams that have very few owners. So this is like the filtered list of teams that have an issue. So all those teams should be fixed, but are not, obviously. So we have 46 teams that have less than 2 owners. What I can do here is I can edit the policy. Now I want to show you how policies are set up and configured. So first of all, you select the object that you want the policy to work on. In this case, it's the team object. If we open up this drop-down box, we see that we have here all possible objects of all Microsoft 365 services available: SharePoint, Viva Engage, OneDrive. So you can pick all of those objects as a starting point for your policy. So we want to have a policy about the teams that we have in our environment. You can then add a condition for related objects. In this case, for example, we want to see all teams that have less than or equal 1 owners. Pretty simple. So that's it already. So this policy gives you a list of all teams that have 0 or 1 owners. Theoretically, you can add filters to each of those objects. For example, here, the team, you can add filters depending on the properties of a team. So we see here all properties of a team. Display name, for example, you could, for example, say display name starts with HR, for example. If the names of your teams all start with HR for your HR department, for example, you could filter this object if you only want to look at your HR teams. You can do the same with the related objects as well. We have owners here, so we have different properties. For example, first name, last name. I think we also have the country. Could say, for example, country or region equals Australia. And you would only look at owners that are in Australia. That's the filtering. You can also add groups. So you have this nice little logic engine here, and you can create all kinds of logical policies here. Yeah, so much about the policies. Now, if we have violations of policies, we obviously want to do something. That's where automation comes in. So when we go to automation, yeah, so what do we want to do if something happens? So let's add an automation here. Add automation. So we have a set of templates where we can start from, but we want to create a custom automation, so brand new. First of all, we have to determine the trigger. So when do we want the automation to happen? Edit trigger. So we have different options here. We can have manual triggers. So that means that if I choose that and we choose here the object, for example, let's say subscriptions, then we would get an automation that we would have to trigger manually if we are in a subscription. So if we save that, and next time we go to in the Rencore governance tool, we go to a subscription, we drill down in the inventory, go to a certain subscription, we will then have in a menu the option of starting this automation because it's connected to subscriptions. So that helps administrators sometimes to do jobs or automations when they are in a certain object and they want to do something like archive the object or something like that. We also have on schedule, obviously that's for automations that you want to run regularly, for example, every month. Then we have on form values. That's something that Ryan is going to talk about because it has to do with provisioning. And what we are interested in is on policy violation. So we want to trigger an automation on policy violation. And now here we can choose the policy. So we want to go to teams because we already know the teams with very few owners. That's our policy. Okay, then save. So now we have a trigger that runs every time a team has or gets 1 or 0 owners. So when a violation happens. Now the question is, what can we do then? So that's the action part. So there's a lot possible here. We can add or remove SharePoint file groups with certain permissions. So we can do a lot of things. We have, again, a condition here, so we can create logic in this automation. If this is the case, then do this. If this is the case, then do that. And what I want to show you, another thing is invoke requests. Yes, what's also possible is you can send HTTP requests, you can trigger Azure functions, and you can trigger webhooks. That opens up the system to whatever you like. So if you choose one of those options, you can do whatever you like. Obviously, with Azure functions, you can, code whatever you like and do whatever is possible. So you're not bound to the other actions that are listed here. You can open up your system. What we want to do is we want to send an email. So what we could do here, we could send the email to like a governance team, for example. So if a violation happens, obviously you want to inform a governance team or like maybe a sub-team of governance. In this case, I would send it to myself. Just have my address. And here, subject, I want to show you one thing. We can violation of team, and then we can choose the display name of the team. So we have the team here. We can choose the display name. So it would put the display name of the team in the subject. Same for the body. You can write your text in the body. You can use formatting, and then you can add certain fields of the team and of related object of the team. For example, channels, owners, and so on and so on. So there's a lot possible here. Yeah, so that's me see if I have anything on my list that I want to show. No, I think that's basically it. So as you see, you can do a lot of things with automation. You can basically automate your whole governance system with emails, or you can send messages to teams and stuff like that automatically. The last part of my presentation is the reports. I just want to show you the reports real quickly. So we have already a few reports in the system that come with the tool. Reports are similar to policies in the definition. So I'll show you one report, top 10 departments by monthly license costs, for example. Yeah, it gives you a visualization of your report. It gives you a few, and then it gives you, in this case, the top 10 departments by monthly license costs. So the most cost-intensive departments are listed here. Again, we can edit this report. We can create our own reports, and we can delete reports, obviously. So again, everything is configurable. We see the logic is the same or very similar to the policy logic. We choose a report object, subscription in this case, that has a monthly costs greater than 0, obviously. And then we that has a department, or that has at least one user that has a department, because we wanted to show the top 10 of departments. And this gives us all basically a list of all subscriptions that have monthly costs greater than 0. In the next step, and that's the difference to the policies, we see the visualization. So here you have basically a little business intelligence tool where you can configure your report. And yeah, I mean, that's another 1 hour explanation of how this works. But if you know business intelligence tools like Power BI, I think you would understand how that works. So that's one difference to the policies. And another important difference is, let me just go back. Somehow I should get to the, we go back to the report. We have the 3 dots at the top, and we can share this report. Obviously, that's pretty important. So what would you do with your reports? You want to send them to recipients, to management, for example. And you can do that. You can do it in a recurring email. You just choose the recipients here, and then you can schedule. Well, daily is a bit too much, but you would, for example, send it monthly at a certain time. That means that an email with a link to this report would be sent to for example, management or whoever you want to inform with this report. All right, now let me just go, before I hand over to Ryan, let me just go back to dashboards, because I want to show you the dashboards again. And here you see this tile. So now that we have learned that we have inventory objects, we have compliance policies, and we have reports, you see that every tile that we see here is based on either a policy, a report, or I have to find one that's based on an inventory object. I can't find one, but there are also tiles based on inventory objects. So the dashboard is basically an overview of different policies, different reports, and different inventory objects. And you can, yeah, as I said, configure everything. Yeah, that's basically everything from myself. Now I am going to hand over to Ryan. Yeah, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, I would say welcome, but we are 75% of the way through the webinar. But my name is Ryan, obviously. And I have been in the IT business for 9 years, around Microsoft for not that much shorter, around 7 years, I would say, or 6, 7 years. And I'm typically, well, I've come from a development background and I've moved into project management and solution architecting as well around Microsoft 365 solutions. I am also a public speaker, so I am actually speaking at a roadshow that's coming up, hosted by ACS, where we're going up the coast of Queensland. We're doing a roadshow at, well, one at Cairns, one in Townsville, one in Bundy, Gold Coast, Brisbane City Council, and I think I'm missing a couple more, but we're doing quite a few places around the coast throughout the next 4 to 6 months. Obviously, my email and LinkedIn URL are there if you need to contact myself. Peter's was shown a little bit earlier, but you can contact either of us for any information, or if you have any other additional questions after the webinar as well. So as Peter mentioned, I'm going to be going over the provisioning and access reviews around Rencore governance. So provisioning. What is provisioning? Well, essentially provisioning is just a way of templatizing your implementation of Teams or SharePoint sites, for example. So first thing you typically want to do within an organization to prevent users from going crazy and creating clutter and creating multiple teams and SharePoint sites is to prevent any user from doing this and restrict it to your admins. Now, a lot of organizations do this and then say, we're done, we don't need to do anything else. However, this does create a bottleneck in regards to your IT process automation. So users will then have to email IT or email maybe a manager who then forwards it to IT if they don't know who to communicate with, to then try and provision a team or SharePoint site. So there are many tools available to automate this provisioning process, but obviously we're looking at Rencore today. And it's just there to templatize your provisioning of Teams and SharePoint sites, which will not only help you automate this process, but also allow or save you time and money, but and also give you more consistent naming conventions for your future provisioning. Access reviews. This is essentially the same as what Microsoft have implemented in Azure around their groups and resource groups as well, around access reviews of those who has access to be able to change resources in Azure. This is the same idea, just implemented on a Microsoft 365 level. So essentially what you want to do is you can get the owners of SharePoint apps, or SharePoint sites, Power Apps, Power Automate, Flows, Teams, and Microsoft 365 groups, or you can even delegate the access review to certain users. And they're essentially going to go through each one and make sure that users have access to what they're meant to have access to. So maybe Joe, who was working in the IT department, moved department and still has access to the IT data and IT information, which he shouldn't have anymore. And this is where access reviews are important, because it removes the security risk of users moving on or moving to different departments and still having access to data that they shouldn't have. So back into the Rencore governance. Now we have these two tabs, access review and provisioning. I'm going to first start off with provisioning and then go to access reviews, then come back to provisioning, then go back to access reviews. The reason is because it does take a little bit of time to generate the information once I create a provisioning template or a access review. So to start off with provisioning, once I go to the provisioning tab, I'll be able to see my requests. In my opinion, this view isn't very useful. It's showing what requests I can approve or reject, as I'm a manager of the Rencore application. However, what I can do in here is go to manage provisioning templates. In here, you will see there are two templates already, so a project team and a customer team. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a template to provision a SharePoint communications site. So I can click on add template. Now there are different templates available, and at the bottom of each template, you can see what it's actually going to be provisioning, so either a team or a SharePoint site in the end. So I'll click on use this template. Now I can name the template itself. So this is the name that users will be able to see when they go to request a new SharePoint site. So let's just say demo communication site, not the best naming convention. However, I can also give it a description. I can see, or I can select who can see this template. I can make it so that everyone can see it, or I can make it so that only certain users of a security group or Microsoft 365 group have access to use this template. I'm happy with everyone in this case, so I'm going to click next. And then it's going to show me the settings for this template. So these are settings which I am configuring when someone wants to request access or request this SharePoint site. So I'm going to say they have to have a minimum of 2 owners. And we're going to have a SharePoint prefix of com. So that means whenever the SharePoint site is created, we're going to use the title that they use and then add com to the front, or com dash. I can then add security labels if I want to. In this case, I'm not, but I am going to allow the user to change the sensitivity labels. And then I can also configure or set, I should say, hard code specific owners or members of users using this provisioning template. So in this case, I am going to add Peter. I'm going to allow the user to also be able to select what owners and members can be a part of this SharePoint site. I'm going to use a communication site template. You can also add your own PNP templates if you have the in-house capability to do so. And this is where you can get pretty fancy with what you can do in regards to provisioning the SharePoint site. So you can add your custom code, for example, once the SharePoint site has been provisioned. Obviously, this is consent. This is just making sure that that Rencore has permission to provision the SharePoint site. If this does not have a green tick, then you need to make sure you go into Azure and make sure that the Rencore app has permission to use Graph and provision the SharePoint site. Then I go to next. I can add the approvers. So I'm going to say everyone in this list needs to approve. I'm going to add myself and also Peter as well. So we're going to have 2 approvers in this case. And that means when someone requests this communication site and wants to create a new one, both Peter and myself have to approve before the site is provisioned. You can now configure the email that is sent to Peter and myself once a site is to be provisioned. However, I'm not going to worry about that now. And then I can also set a reminder in case we both don't respond within X amount of days. And I can have a cancel on timeout. So if we don't respond in a week, maybe we just cancel the request. Now I click done. Save and enable. Okay, great. Now I'm going to show you what is called the Nova app. So Nova is another app from Rencore. And essentially what it is just a app that your organizational users is going to be using. So the Rencore app itself, this is for your admins, so your IT admins or service desk admins, for example. Maybe they have permission to Rencore, but you don't want your everyday users having access to this tool for obvious reasons, because they can see essentially everything. So there is this Nova app. So you can either access this via the website URL, nova.rencore.com, or you can install the Teams app as well, where you can now use Nova within Teams. You can then also configure your Teams via the admin center to make sure Nova is available on everyone's Teams, but it's going more in depth. So from here, I'm now an everyday user. So there's different tabs at the top. Essentially, there's workspaces. So what's available, I can request a new workspace. And now you are going to see that our provisioning template is available to be able to use and provision. So before I go into that, I will show you the other one. So this tab is for access reviews, which I'll get into very shortly. So if there is an access review assigned to me, I will be able to go into this area of the Nova app and then conduct my access reviews. Then I also have approvals if there is a provisioning of a Teams or SharePoint site that I need to approve. Then this is where I will go to then approve that request. Okay, so workspaces, request workspace. I'm going to click on use template. Now I'll give the site a name. Also not the best naming convention. Description. And I can also define the security and also other owners and members as well. Now I do have selected add current requester as owner, so that means there are going to be 2 owners to begin with. Myself as I'm the requester, and also Peter, which is configured in the template. So now I can click submit. And this is going to take a little bit, so I can't show you just yet. So I am going to move on to access reviews very quickly. So now back into the Rencore app, I'm going to click on access, and this is where I can add access reviews or configure access reviews to be taken. So there are different templates available: Microsoft 365 groups, Teams, Power Automate Flows, Power Apps, and SharePoint sites. In this case, I'm going to click on Power Automate Flows. This is template. I'm going to say manually. There is also on schedule. So you can say every month I want to conduct a access review across the whole organization. You can add filters for what specifically you want to have an access review for. So for, let's say, for the flow, last run is within the last month, let's say for that example. So then you're not doing an access review for things that aren't running. Okay, so then I go next. I can configure the access review settings. So I can say the owner needs to conduct the access review, or I can specify certain users. Say, for example, you're being audited, or you have a certain department who's going to do this audit process or access review process. You can give these users the role of conducting the access review. In this case, I am going to add myself. I think I have to add, type in my full name. Okay, very good. Next, access review for flows. I'm okay with that. I'm not going to have any description for this case. And then I click save. So now what this is doing now is it's scanning all Power Automate flows within Rencore to see what it needs to, or what needs to have this access review for. So maybe I added a filter. And so what it needs to do is it needs to go through the Rencore database, see exactly what flows match the filters I've applied, and then it'll add them to the access review and also assign me to the access review. While that is going on, I will go to my approvals tab. Let's see if it's there. Very good. Now the provisioning approval request. That's not correct. Okay, the SharePoint one is not. Oh, SharePoint site. Maybe I've got the wrong logo. Okay, so now I can see the provisioning request. So the SharePoint site name, demo again, quick description. I can see everything about the SharePoint site, owners, for example, the request information, and so on. Then I can just click decline or approve. In this case, I'm going to click approve. Now, in this case, I will also need Peter to approve it before it's actually provisioned. So it's not going to be provisioned until Peter also approves, but that would be how this provisioning process would work. Now, if I go back to access review. Okay, very good. Now it's finished the scan, and now we are able to see exactly what needs to be reviewed in this process. So there is also the Rencore app, or the Nova app, I should say, for your end users who don't have access to Rencore, and they can also see what is available for them to review. Now I will go to, for example, this flow right here, start review. have a look at the owners. Okay, I can then click next, members and guests, see who's available or who has access to it. Click next and then approve if I'm happy with everything. In this case, I will approve. And I will have to do that for each Power Automate flow that I've been assigned to. Now, as Peter was showing earlier, within the Rencore app, under inventory, there is also this access report. If I find myself, tab, and I click on access, what I can do is I can create an access report. This is perfect for user offboarding, where you can actually see exactly what does the user have access to. So the report has generated. It shouldn't take too long. It usually takes about 30 seconds. Let's see if it can finish quick enough. There. But as you can see, there is a lot of benefits around your provisioning and access review, essentially just making sure your environment is as secure as possible, and people who shouldn't have access to certain information don't have access. So I'll jump back to the PowerPoint slide time. Now, questions about pricing. This is obviously the most important. These are in Australian dollars, and these are currently added, yearly prices, so you can change it to monthly if you wish. They're also available, but this is for up to 250 users. Obviously, as your the larger your organization is, the more the price is going to go up. You can see estimates on the Rencore website, which I can show you at the end. Very shortly. But there are a few things to note. Non-profit organizations get a 15% discount. And also there are additional discounts for A licenses and F-type licenses around Microsoft. So if you have A or F-type licenses, you will be able to get additional discounts around those as well. There are 3 levels of Rencore. So there is the Essential package, which essentially just comes with the inventory, actions, and reports. The Professional edition, that's where you can configure and change your compliance policies, and you can also configure automations around your policies as well. So once the policy is violated, then what do you want to do? You want to maybe you want to archive the team, and so on. Finally, you have the Enterprise edition, which is everything previously, along with your provisioning and access reviews. And you also get virtual tenants, so you can split your tenant up into different tenants within Rencore. Here are some FAQs that we often get asked. Can I try it for free? Yes, you can. I will show you how to do that right now. So if you go to the Rencore site, there is up here, you can say try for free. You click that, you log in with Microsoft. You will be prompted to give Rencore permissions to access your tenant. You will need to make sure you are a global administrator, I'm fairly certain, to be able for it to scan your data, as it uses application permissions via graph. But yes, you can trial it for free, and I think it's a 30-day trial as well. What counts as a user? So a user is any active user with a license within your tenant. You can go through that list. If you have any additional questions, a lot of them are listed on the Rencore website as well. So I'd highly recommend going to that to find out more. Okay. Are there any questions? Okay, very good. There is another question that I often get asked when we're at conferences, for example, is when is Power BI going to be part of Rencore? It's always a funny question. Rencore are currently waiting for Microsoft to implement Power BI via Graph. So Microsoft have pushed that date back to this year. So they are looking to have Power BI implemented, I think, in Q2 this year. But it does depend on Microsoft and their schedule for the Power BI API. Apart from that, thank you all very much for attending. Thank you for your time. Feel free to give it a go. Let us know what you think. And if you have any questions, contact Peter or myself via LinkedIn or email, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can, or immediately. And yeah, have a good afternoon, and we'll see you next time.